All right, welcome back to the channels, guys. I showed up here in Oregon with Bradley, not knowing he had the Kenda RT.
Oh yeah.
And I've got the Kenda KLEVER MT2 mud terrains. And we just were like, hey, let's talk about it and share with people what we think are the pros and cons with our experience, so you guys can make a better decision. And I've only had mine for, I think, the majority of this trip, plus some off-roading in Colorado. So I've got probably like maybe 2,000 miles on it. And it's definitely it's practically an ATV tire, and that comes with its pros and cons. And I knew that getting into it. And the pros in my mind for what I use it for definitely outweigh the cons. Okay. I did consider the RTs, although these look fantastic. Like, it'd be hard to need more than that. What are your, give me a little background.
So this is actually my second set of these. I loved them so much the first time around. I was like, I'm getting them again.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I love them. I'm probably getting close to where I'm like, I'll probably, go for my third set. But I wanted something, I'd always run kind of ATs, normal ATs.
Yeah.
Different brands, and I wanted something a little more aggressive. I was getting more into the overlanding stuff and more time off-road and more time on rougher trails. And there was just times, especially in Oregon with all the rain, where the mud is like not quite bad enough to where I felt like I needed an MT, but I wanted something more than the ATs were giving me. And the RT from Kenda was like the perfect fit. So plus it looks great. I mean, it's got that aggressive look, that aggressive sidewall, and functional in my mind too, right?
Yeah.
Versus a lot of stuff. So it's not all looks like some stuff is.
Yeah.
And it's worked out great for me.
Sweet. How many miles do you get on those first set?
I'm really bad at tracking that stuff, to be honest.
Roughly, ballpark.
I mean, it was like it was a lot of like long trips too, because we went back and forth to Texas a bunch, and then off-roading, kind of overlanding during those trips. So it was probably a good, I want to say probably like 30,000 miles or something, like before I kind of felt like, oh, all right, it was,
How much was on there at 30K-ish? You replace them before you need to?
Yeah, I typically do, especially because like, a lot of times if it's getting anywhere close and then I'm like rolling into hunting season or like I know I'm going to be doing a bunch of trips, it's like, I'll just swap them out a little early, I don't mind doing that.
Yeah.
I'd rather be like, have them be new rather than not quite have enough when I'm out in the woods doing stuff. So
yeah, that's pretty good for then if you're getting 30, because you probably could have got 50 if you were just running around town. Yeah, for sure. I've been guilty of like running mine too long, but I have also found that if you sell them when there's some meat on them, you actually might make $400 on a used set and cover one of those new tires.
Right.
Yeah, and like I said, these are pretty new. I came off the Baja Boss AT, which I loved. That was actually more like an RT than a typical AT. And I got so much more out of those than a standard AT that I was thinking, man, I should just see what's next level up. And I almost did the RTs, but then I was like, the looks got me. Like, I'm like, those look cool. And then let me see. I was looking at, I know what it was. I like these narrow, these are like a 10.5, and I think those are pretty narrow. They make it narrow in the RTs.
Yeah. No, this is 33 by 10.5, yeah.
And I almost got those, but they were like over 70 pounds. And I was like, well, I wonder how much the MT weighs. Those are heavy. And these were lighter.
Really?
Yeah, the MT was, I think they're like 66 pounds. I've got it on my other video.
For the same like load rating and everything else?
Yeah. And I think what's going on there is they're both using the same carcass. I think those use a mud terrain carcass, like the basically the guts, the foundation. Yeah. But there's less rubber because look at the space between the lugs.
Oh, true. Interesting.
And so I was like, well, there's going to be a trade-off on noise, but I think MPGs might actually be better with the mud terrain.
Interesting.
And MPG is probably my biggest concern because I'm carrying like tons of steel. You are too. Yeah. And then I have the small tank, which kind of sucks. I need to upgrade that. And so my range on this thing already bad. So I've really got to get the right, preserve what MPGs I have left. And I have the 4.6 in a big heavy truck. So it's just especially when I'm loaded, I barely have any juice, so like that rotational mass matters a lot for me.
Big deal. Yeah, and I like the skinny tires anyway. Like, so many people, I think, do the fat wide stuff just for the looks, and it's like kind of it's counterproductive in most cases for most people's use, you know?
Yeah, it kind of kills your gas mileage. It actually makes your suspension less functional. A lot of people don't know this, but especially if you're running a lighter rig, like, well, yours isn't light anymore.
Right.
You got all that stuff, but it's lighter than this. If you're running a relatively light rig and you've got a ton of weight here and you hit a bump, it's more likely to make the vehicle do that than if you're running less weight here, because that suspension can soak up the bump before it moves the truck.
Right.
I mean, it's just physics.
Yeah.
And so it gives you a smoother ride, and I'm all about the smoother ride. And my wife, she comes with us a lot of the places we go. And Colorado's the bumpiest roads you can imagine. Like, there's no topsoil or gravel on the roads. It's just everywhere you go. And so, like, I remember her biggest complaint was, she's like, man, if I've never been on a bull ride before, but she's like, this is how I imagine bull riding is. And so ever since she said that, I was like, I need to do whatever I can to make this as comfortable as possible for her. And then actually it made me way more comfortable. And I noticed like less fatigue at the end of the day when I've got, you know, nice suspension and all that.
Right. Yeah, and that's such a big deal. And like, you know, these are, I found them to be extremely tough. You know, a lot of like the more rough log, like the rock they put down on some of these logging roads out here in Oregon, it's like it'll be like super chunky, sharp stuff.
Yeah.
And so like, you know, airing down with these, I have no qualms of rolling over any of that stuff. Never had a puncture, never had sidewall issues,
chunking,
nothing crazy like that. So you know, it's been great for me. I really like it. And like, the skinnies too, especially, like, so many people, I mean, you watch these old timey videos, you know, of these like, they're like pencil thin and they're just going up all kind of crazy. It's like you don't need these super fat tight off. Like I said, it's often counterproductive. And now, what's your mud like out there in Colorado?
It's
like, because here, where I'm at specifically, we have a decent amount of clay, and so it's sort of like, no matter what, when you're kind of in that kind of mud, it's like if it gets filled up, it doesn't matter if it's an MT or an RT or whatever, it's kind of... But I have found that these do eject better, longer than the ATs I had previously, but still, every once in a while, if it just gets packed in there enough, you know, it gets slick. But what's your experience been with that, with the MT?
So these are, like I said, new. I haven't had them in too much mud. I got them in some sort of like snow melt mud a couple times, and they just like clawed straight through it. And I did get in some mud in Oregon here, and didn't even know I was in mud. I got out of the truck, and there was like one section that it hadn't cleared from yet, and I'm like, wow, okay. So I mean, it's really hard to ignore how much space is there, and that's what it. I mean, it's not just mud, but I took them in like slushy, steep snow, and it was like going up on a. It was like a cog train, just like straight up. But I have been in the mud in Colorado. It's the Rocky Mountains, so you're either in rock most of the time, right? But if you get into these basins where all that sediment washes down and there's a creek bottom, I've almost been completely trapped with the guy holding the camera there with a pair of General Grabber ATs, probably at 40 miles an hour, and we were moving about 5 miles an hour because it couldn't clear the mud. And so that spooked me, and I screwed up the sidewalls doing it because we were sliding into ruts, like roots and rocks and all that kind of crap that was in the ruts. And so that's when I popped 4 of those Generals running in just rock after that, and I damaged them on that one. But so that's why I've started taking the sidewalls more serious. And then because I don't use this as a daily driver anymore, and I'm typically like a few hours before we get off road, but that ends up being like 10% of my trips. I don't mind a little bit extra noise. The noise isn't even bad. They were quieter than my Baja Boss when they were old. So like the new mud train is quieter than the old Baja Boss AT, but the Baja Boss AT was quieter when it was new. The bigger issue on the road when you have this much rubber cut out is in turns, if you're getting a good clip, it can feel a little bit loose, kind of like if you've ever ridden a dirt bike. It's just like, but you kind of get used to it. We were in a windstorm coming out here, like 60-mile-an-hour winds, and it was fun holding my lane. But again, it's such a small percentage of what I do, versus when I'm off road, we'll be on, you know, some sketchy side hill stuff, and it just goes straight down. This truck's just planted. Like there's no tail wiggle, nothing. Like it's just, if anything, I'm like, ooh, I hope my differential can handle that, because I can feel like, I'm like, it needs to break loose a little bit just to get this turn, and you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've never really noticed any issues with obviously the Lexus is very well, like the sound on the inside, no matter what, like no matter what tire you're running, it's really good. Like it's really quiet in there, no matter what. And I get more noise. Like normally I have a rooftop tent on, so I get some noise from that. And then I have all my seats in the back taken out, and I haven't like sound deadened under all that or anything. So I get more noise just by virtue of having that stuff out than I do from the tires. So
yeah,
you know, I haven't noticed any difference with tires in terms of the noise.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that. Like Lexus, yeah, no, smart guy. They don't make a truck, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Well, they're really nice. How many miles do you have on those?
These ones have got to be. They're probably coming up on that 30,000-ish ballpark at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Zoom in on that, Reed. That's got 30,000 on it?
Yeah, I've done a lot less off-road on this set than I have on my previous, but like I said, I'm terrible at keeping track of that stuff, so it could, I don't know, it could be less, could be more.
Wow, that's impressive, dude. So Bradley replaces them right around here. If anyone needs a set of tires, just give him a call, because he'll probably get a good deal on some barely used. Yeah, those are probably good for 60K the way most guys run them.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. Well, maybe I'll give those a try next time. I don't know. I'm kind of hooked on this. These are the 35 by 10.5. What's your size?
33 by 10 and a half. Yeah.
33 by 10 and a half. And you got 17-inch rims?
17-inch rims.
Yeah, same here. That looks like it has plenty of sidewall.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. All right.
I'm super happy with them. Definitely recommend.
Me too. Good stuff.
Awesome.
Thanks, dude.
Yeah. Good to catch up.
All right, well, that wraps up the little conversation Bradley and I had about the Kenda KLEVER RTs and the MT2 mud terrains. Hope that was helpful for you guys if you're considering buying these tires. You can't go wrong with either one of them. I would lean towards the RTs if you're more road heavy or if you're doing a lot of daily driving. And the MTs if you just want that ultimate off-road performance. The space between the tread blocks really does make a difference in the mud. Although I do think both tires are probably close to equally durable. I can't say for sure, but Bradley had some pretty good things to say about the durability factor. And I really wouldn't sweat the weight. That heavy weight I was talking about was a 35-inch. I'm pretty sure his RTs are significantly lighter than mine, being in a 33. In any case, if you guys want to see the full review I did on the first impressions of my MT2s, and I compared them to what I came off of the Baja Boss AT. I did a full sound test. I weighed them. I took it off-road. Some of those clips you saw earlier came from that. Be sure to click the link in the end and check out the rest of the channel. I'll go over a lot more of the things I've done to my truck. If you guys are curious and want to stay tuned, please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks again for watching.